Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunday Morning Live on this Father's Day, June 15th, 2025. I'm your host, Aaron Tomlinson. I want to thank you for joining me for this today. If you're not out celebrating Father's Day at the moment, we'll give a few minutes to see if anybody jumps online. If you watch by replay, as always, I appreciate that. Let me know in the comments if you're watching live or watching by replay. Had a great time last week with the people from Home, which is a new work that's starting up here in Pueblo. Home is an acronym that stands for Healing Ourselves More Every Day, and they're trying to build spiritual community. They have been hosting workshops, yoga classes, sound bowl baths, all kinds of stuff. And they said they wanted to start having meetings on Sunday mornings and asked me if I would speak occasionally, maybe more permanently. We'll see how it goes. But it was really nice. If you saw the video quality, obviously, as we do this going forward, we can improve on that a little bit, hopefully. And I'm just saying that because, if you followed me for any time at all. But it was really great. It was great to speak to a group again. I haven't done that in a lot of years. By that, I mean a live group where I could see somebody else's face besides my own. And it was really good. The people that came out as a small group, but the energy was good. And it was just nice to get back into that space. So if you saw that, I hope you enjoyed it. If not, you can find it on my Facebook. Did not get streamed to YouTube just because of limitations and what have you. But I will be speaking again. If you're local and you would like to come out, I'll get you the address. I think it's 130 Oneida or 109 Oneida, something like that. It's right next to Walter's Brewery, behind the AT&T building there. If you're local, you know what I'm talking about. But I'll be doing that again on, let me look at the dates here, and streaming it live, at least to Facebook, July 6th and August 3rd. So be looking forward to doing that. Also, if you look at the description, I have an upcoming event that I'm going to be doing live in person for local people, or if you want to fly into Pueblo, hey, that'd be great to have you. And also be doing it online. I'm going to attempt to host a Zoom call, but I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. The information's in the description. Jeanette Pacheco is helping me set this up, so I really appreciate that help from her. And so the way this came about was I did, for those of you that were part of the Celebrating a New You group, I did 50 days from Easter to Pentecost Sunday, which was last Sunday. I wanted to talk about the Holy Spirit, but I just didn't feel like the right venue or place to do that. I might do that a little bit today. I haven't decided fully which direction I'm going yet. And let's see. So if you want to sign up for that, Jeanette's email is in the description. Please send her an email and she'll give you all the information. Just make sure you put reserve my spot in the title where you're sending, or, in the title description or whatever for your email. You know how that works. And we'll get you the information. So the way this came about, I was doing 50 days of personal devotions to celebrating yourself, celebrating a new you. And this harkens back to something that I did when I was a pastor. We would always take a time of dedication, focus. We called it consecration, from Easter Sunday to Pentecost Sunday. And I would release daily devotionals on a particular topic. And then I would usually finish out by holding a workshop around that topic. And so this is maintaining that same spirit of the idea. There was enough response, enough really positive feedback from the Celebrating the New You group that we're going to go ahead and follow up with a Zoom call, follow up with, like I said, a local event. So it'll be local, but we'll be sending it through Zoom to people that want to sign up for that. And I'm calling it Unleashing Your Best Self. Hat tip to AI there for helping me come up with the title. But what I want to do is share some really practical tools with you that can help you identify where you might be self-sabotaging, where you might be blocking yourself, where you may be stuck because of negative self-talk or stuck because of emotions or things that you're feeling. And so I'm going to teach you how to identify those things, and then specifically how to transmute or transform those things. And this is something that I started teaching about 10 years ago, and I've built on it since then. But the fruit from it, the results from it have been amazing for people as they've been able to apply these principles. It's something that I developed myself. Obviously, there's input from other sources and stuff like that, but it was something that about more than 10 years ago, I started using with myself to try to address my own negative thoughts and negative self-talk and stuck emotions. And something that was quite effective for me as I experimented and worked on this myself. And then I began to teach it to other people, and they began to find success and effectiveness with that as well. So again, if you're interested in that, the information is in the description. Hope to get as many people as want to work on that and get some breakthrough and get some freedom. Try to get this out to as many people as possible. So there's that. Let me go into Facebook and change my settings, make sure this is shared to all the different places. So give me a second as I do that. And happy Father's Day to everyone out there. One second here. Need to change it to, it is not letting me change it. Hold on one second. Well, darn. Oh, that's why I can't do it. One second. No, not going to let me change it today for some reason. So I'll have to figure that out later. So I won't be able to share that to groups and stuff today for some reason. I don't know why it's giving me trouble. But anyway, thanks for joining me. I want to share a story with you. And I've been debating this morning whether or not I should share this because of the personal nature of it. But I decided, what the heck, I would go ahead and do this. So I want to talk about my personal journey with manifesting. I want to share with you something that was very important to us, and how, if you cooperate with life, you can get outcomes that match your desired outcomes. They may not match your required outcomes, but they'll match your desired outcomes. So one of the things that I've really been wrestling with is, if you've been on this journey with me, is for me, life is, now let me back up. How do I want to say this? All right. So let's just take, for example, that you have something that you want to change. You have something that you want to manifest in your life. You have, if you're still coming from the Christian perspective, you have a prayer that you want to see answered. And you've been doing all kinds of different stuff. Maybe you've been on different prayer lists. Maybe you've watched videos like this in the past. Maybe you have done self-help type stuff. Maybe you read Napoleon Hill or Neville Goddard, or learned about the law of attraction, stuff like that, the prayer of faith, however you want to frame that. But you have had minimal results at best. So let's start with that, because this is something that I can definitely relate to. I've talked about in past videos in the New Day Global Group about manifesting healing. There's also been times that we've manifested, all kinds of different stuff. And one of the advantages that I had when I was facing this very serious illness that I was facing in September of last year is that I had definitely some experience with manifesting the desires of my heart consistently enough that I could look back and say, okay, I know what principles work. I know what doesn't work. I don't know all that there is to know about this topic. I don't know why sometimes we get manifestations and sometimes we wouldn't. I don't know why some people seem to get more manifestations. I don't know all of the why. I know a lot of the why, some of the why. And but it really helped me as I was going through this health journey, this healing journey that I've been on, in order to take control of the situation and not fall victim. I don't like that word. Not fall subject to whatever the prognosis was or whatever the algorithms in scientific research and studies on my particular condition that predicts the outcomes of these things, but was able to really do some work within myself and on myself in order to manifest full and complete healing. So I want to take you back. So as I'm sharing this, my goal is, as I'm sharing this, to try to assist you with things that I've worked out in my own life. And then you can see maybe where you're at and see if there's something that you can take and you can apply. So I want you to think about this. One of the problems that we have as human beings is that because we live in these bodies, because we had no control over when we were born or who we were born to, we have very little control over the circumstances, the setting in which we find ourselves in any given situation in life, the people that we interact with, and whether or not their will is cooperating with our will, or various different things like that. So what can happen is it can end up leaving us feeling isolated. It can end up, we can end up in a place of overwhelm. We can end up in a place of feeling powerless, feeling hopeless. We can end up in a place of giving up. And we can really begin to wonder if there's any meaning in life or any plan or any synchronicity or anything at all. Now, a lot of people that have struggled with their religious experiences from the past, and you know, we need to realize not everybody struggles with religion and not everybody is a religious jerk. There's certainly a lot out there. You know, we deal with them all the time. If you talk about this kind of stuff on social media, you're certainly going to get feedback from what I would call religious jerks. They just try to come in and tell you that you're wrong, tell you that you're going to hell, tell you that you're deceived by Satan, all of that sort of stuff. And certainly if you have deconstructed from religion or you have left religion, then there have been aspects of it that were toxic for you, aspects of it that weren't working for you, whatever the reason may be that you deconstructed or that you left. It's not all just intellectual or I got insight or I studied and found out. There are reasons that you studied. There are reasons that you got those insights that go beyond just the actual actions of, oh, I got some new information. I thought the Bible was inerrant, but I got new information. Apparently it's not. I start wrestling with this problem of evil and realize, man, there's some really toxic, horrible stuff that is in the Bible that has been weaponized and used to start wars and used against people for centuries. And I no longer want to identify with that, or I no longer want to identify as that. And those are all components of it, but it's not the fuller picture of it. And for each person, that bigger picture is going to be somewhat different. I was more intuitively led out of where I was at than intellectually led out of where I was at. Some people are more intellectually led out of where they were at, but that's not the whole story. So there are some people that their spirituality, their faith, their religious practices work for them and serve them and make them better human beings, make them more involved in life and whatever the case may be. So we need to not pretend like it's all toxic just because it was all toxic to us, or that everyone out there that believes that is a jerk just because we run into these jerks a lot if we're posting and doing stuff on social media. But at the end of the day, life can become overwhelming if we feel isolated, if we feel disconnected, if we feel powerless, if we feel hopeless, if we feel like there's nothing that we can do about our life or about our situation that can bring about change. Now, anybody can say, well, there are things in life that you can control. So as a licensed clinical therapist who works in a university where I don't bring in very many spiritual principles, certainly don't bring anything in about God or manifestation or the law of attraction, but have to stick to these scientific clinical methodologies, then I can tell you that one of the things that we're taught to focus on and that we focus on in therapy are what are some of the things that you can control versus some of the things that you can't control. And what can you do based on what you can control to improve your situation? And so, because I work at a university, this might involve things like getting out of a bad relationship because you're not happy in that relationship, getting tutoring in a particular subject if you're struggling in a particular class in order to pass it, applying for scholarships or financial aid if there's a financial problem there, seeing what other sort of resources might be available to you that you can access and that you can apply. And certainly these things are important, and certainly they can help to manage and resolve any problem or obstacle or situation that you come up against. But I want you to think about this. If you have a specific outcome that you want to manifest, and there is no spiritual reality, and there is no plan, there is no organization, there is no pattern, there is no blueprint for your life, everything is random or based on probabilities, I want you to think about how many different things you would have to control just to make whatever that thing is that you want to happen for you. I want you to think about how many factors outside and beyond your control have to line up for you, have to fall into place for you. How many people have to cooperate with you, even if you just want to get a job. Let's say you want to get a job in a specific field, or you want to get a job at a specific place. Someone else has to see your worth. Someone else has to see your value. A job has to become open. And then there are lots of things that we can't control, like where that job is, and so where we're going to live, et cetera, and so on, right? If you're facing a difficulty in your body may feel like it's declared war on you, like it's not cooperating with you. If you've been given a cancer diagnosis, you've got cancer cells that are going rogue, right? You've got cells in your own body that are going rogue. If you've got an autoimmune disease, your immune system is attacking you. And we can feel like we have no control over those things, especially if it's all random or if it's all just based on probabilities. So at the end of the day, if we take that view that there is no purpose, no plan, nothing out there to help us, nothing out there to support us, and I'm talking about spiritually, no higher self, no spirit guides or angels or Holy Spirit or God whatsoever, then I want you to think about this question, because I used to contemplate it a lot. Why am I me and not you? Like, why is my consciousness here? Like, it can be so frustrating and so overwhelming if you approach life in that way. And it can eventually lead you to a very nihilistic worldview and cause you to become depressed and anxious and lose hope, particularly when you start to go through something that is a very real trial for you. Now, I realize that other people's experiences and mileage may differ, but I think it's safe to say that for the majority of people, that can be a very depressing and overwhelming thought. And if we're going to manifest something, we have to control so many different factors that are beyond our control in order to get there. And that's why we run up against walls. That's why we run up against obstacles. That's why we can feel like we're beating our head against the wall all the time. And why am I me and not you? You have a completely different set of circumstances. Even the gene pool, even the fact that you're you and whatever your genetics are predisposed towards, right? That was just some kind of roll of the dice. Or maybe there is more going on. Maybe there is more going on. Maybe there is more to this. And I'm really struggling to understand why people have difficulty. I understand why people would be atheist if their only option for faith in any kind of God or any kind of creator or any kind of spirit was the religious exposure that they had, particularly if that religious exposure was very shame-inducing, very guilt-inducing, very just generally toxic. And if it's that or nothing, it's this God as it was presented to me in religion, or there is no God at all. It's all just me. Everything is one. Everything is non-dual. Well, that's great. That's a great idea. That's a great idea to have. We're all one. But then let me ask you this question. Why the boundary between you and me? I mean, if you're going to have healthy and successful relationships, I hope we can all agree, you have to have healthy, stable boundaries. What's a boundary? A boundary is an imaginary line, an invisible line, where I understand that I'm me and you're you, and you're not me and I'm not you. And we have different thoughts, different beliefs, different experiences, different emotions, different challenges. And I can't know you except for the parts that you allow me to know. And for a lot of people, and I can tell you this for sure, as a mental health counselor, sometimes we don't even know ourselves. I can't tell you how many people have come in and said, I have this problem, these problems, and they've psychoanalyzed themselves, or they've tried to self-diagnose, and they get the self-diagnosis completely wrong, or they are completely misinformed as to the cause of why something is happening for them in their lives. The cause is often hidden from us, and it takes some work and it takes some digging in order to find the real root cause so that we can make change that will be effective in our lives, right? So we can barely know ourselves sometimes. We certainly don't know each other. There's a verse in the book of Proverbs that says, the heart knows its own bitterness. The heart knows its own bitterness. I know what I've been through. I know what the pain and the bitterness of my life. You know what you've been through. You know the pain and the bitterness in your life. But I won't know your bitterness the way you do, and you won't know my bitterness the way I do. That's just self-evident. You don't need a proverb or a scripture or a Bible to tell you that. But it says the heart knows its own bitterness. And then it goes on and it says, and no one else can share its joy. The heart knows its own bitterness, and no one else can share its joy. So regardless of these concepts that we come up with, and I understand them and I'm not opposing them, I'm not sure that I can fully embrace at this point in my life non-dualism. That's not to say that it's therefore incorrect. But I think sometimes we just grab onto ideas because they sound good. They feel intuitively right. A lot of people are saying them. And so we don't necessarily critically think through these things. And I just am, one of the reasons that the biggest mistakes I've made in my life were because I acquiesced my own sovereignty, my own freedom of choice to other people because I didn't understand boundaries. I didn't understand where I started and stopped and where they started and stopped. And so if you're going to have a healthy relationship, you have to have boundaries. If you have no boundaries, then you get into problems. The problem with religion, fundamentalist religion, dogmatic religion, Christian religion that says we've got the one truth, we've got the one way, and it's our way or the highway. The problem with that is a complete disrespect for boundaries. I'm going to go out and tell you how you should live. I'm going to go out and tell society how they need to act and perform because I'm authorized by God. I've got the one truth, the one revealed truth, and therefore it's universal and applicable to every single person. And people can get upset or offended that buy into that group mind, that buy into that group think. It can feel very empowering. It can feel very meaningful. But when we buy into it, what we fail to do is recognize where we start and stop. We fail to recognize boundaries. And so people can get upset when someone says, my truth. Well, this is my truth. Well, that's your truth. And maybe your truth completely conflicts with my truth. Good. That means we have boundaries. It's not my right or prerogative to try to impose upon you what I think or what I believe, or try to coerce you or be some kind of a spiritual bully and tell you, well, this is the way it is, or this is the way God designed it from the more religious perspective. So you have to have healthy boundaries. So everything that you experience, everything that you and I experience, we experience in our own minds. So you're not actually seeing me or the image of me on the screen. If I were to say, where do you see me, for example, if you're watching it on screen, if you're just listening to it, where do you hear me? Where do you see me? Most of us are going to point out there, right? Well, the truth is, there is something out there. I am out there. I am other than. But here's the truth is that the light, the sound, it's all coming into you. So then your brain is taking those signals and translating it into pictures, into sounds, into feelings, and into perceptions, and projecting that in the screen of your own mind. So if you were to be totally honest about where you see me, you see me in your mind. You see me in your mind because your mind is taking the information that my existence puts out, and it's entering into you through, again, your sense of hearing, your sense of seeing, and then your brain is taking all of that and making sense of it and representing it to you. So where you're really seeing me is in the mind. Now, here's the question. Where is the boundary? Can you see the boundary of your own mind? Can you see the boundary of your own consciousness? Can you see the horizon where your mind ends and something else begins? And if not, well, most of us can't. Like, you can't see it like you can see the horizon on the planet, right? When I'm seeing the sun come up or go down. So therefore, we have to figure out, number one, who we are, what's important to us. And then we have to decide, we have to really come to the grips with the fact that we are not it. We are not everything. We are not the all. We aren't. If I were to say I'm the all, myself is all, the only self that matters. And we're really one self. Well, that may or may not be true. But even if it's true, even if we are just all the mind of God playing out this play with each other in various different roles and what have you, there is still what some call a dissociative boundary, what you might call a dissociative boundary. What's a dissociative boundary? It's what Proverbs says. The heart knows its own bitterness and no one else can share its joy, right? If I don't say something, you don't know what I'm thinking. So if I cause harm to someone, it's real harm. If they cause harm to me, it's real harm. So I'm not going to say I did that to myself or they did that to themselves. You see what I'm saying? Because we just have to come to grips with the fact that we are an individual. We are our own sovereign entity, right? We can get into the higher philosophical concepts and stuff like that, but at a practical level, we have to learn who we are. We have to learn what we value, and then we have to set boundaries. And we set boundaries not by telling the other person what they're going to do, but by stating what we are going to do. So the boss comes in to work and says, I need you to work over the weekend because I have this project due on Monday. I've got choice. Let's say I want you to be available. Let's do this to be better. I want you to be available over the weekend so I can call you if I need any help with this project. Now I've got a choice. I can tell the boss, you're not going to call me on the weekend. You're not going to make me do that. You're not going to set this deadline and demand that I meet it when it's Father's Day weekend and I've got plans this weekend. And that's how a lot of people try to set boundaries, and it's not effective. What is effective is to be able to weigh the cost benefit to yourself. Is the juice worth the squeeze here? And then you decide based on your own values what you're going to do, and you communicate that. I am not going to answer my phone over the weekend. I've got plans this weekend. I'm not going to work on anything, so I won't meet that deadline. So you make a very strong statement about who you are, a very strong statement about what you're going to do. And then other people in your life have a choice how they are going to respond and relate to that. Now, when you are not codependent, when you have a healthy sense of self-esteem, when you have a strong locus of control from inside of you, then you are able to present yourself with integrity and allow people to relate to you based on what you have presented without trying to control them. Codependency is I'm trying to control your response. I know if I say this, it's going to upset you. I know that if I refuse to work over the weekend, that I might lose my job. So I don't want you upset, so I'm going to act a different way. I don't want to lose my job, so I'm going to act a different way. Now, that's, like I said, you got to weigh the cost benefit here. I'm just using these things for illustrations to help you understand how you can more effectively set boundaries. But as it pertains to what I'm talking about, it all relates to how we are relating. It all relates to how we are relating. I'm going to relate to you by telling you what I'm going to do, doing it from a strong place inside, a strong sense of control, a strong sense of self-empowerment and self-esteem. And then I'm not going to try to control your response because I don't need you. Your being upset with me isn't going to affect me to the point that it's going to change me. Your firing me, you're leaving this relationship does not mean I cannot go get another job. It does not mean that I'm going to be destitute. It does not mean that I cannot go out and build other friendships, other relationships, find another romantic partner, whatever the case may be. But that takes a lot of self-confidence, right? That takes a lot of self-esteem. That takes a lot of strength from the inside, or it takes what some psychologists call a strong ego. So I got off on this. I didn't intend to, but hopefully someone is benefiting from it. Then when it comes to, and I get it, like if you don't believe in a spiritual world, you don't believe in invisible forces, other non-physical entities or consciousness, you don't believe in a creator, you don't believe in God, then that's all there is. What interests me is people who are still interested in the metaphysical, meaning the reality of that which cannot be measured, which cannot be quantified. Call it God, call it source, call it your higher self. It may be all of that. We get really confused about the relationship. We say, well, we can't see them. Well, lots of people that can see you have not respected your boundaries. Lots of people that can see me have not respected my boundaries. If I don't understand good boundaries, even though I can see you, I may still try to violate those boundaries. But it seems like we're okay. We have this understanding that relationships are important. Relationships are necessary. You think self is all you need? Go be by yourself and see how you do. You know, don't be with people that you love. Don't interact with other people. If you think self is all there is, how are you going to eat? You going to grow your own food? All of it? And if you're doing that, you're going to go fetch the water from the river? Or are you going to depend on some kind of irrigation system? At somewhere, we're all interconnected. We're all interconnected. We're all dependent upon each other. I go to the grocery store and I'm able to buy food there because there's a checker that takes my money when I buy food. There are people that have stocked the shelves. There are truck drivers that brought the food. There are, if you eat meat, there are butchers who prepared the meat. There are farmers that raised the livestock. There are farmers that raised the fruits and the vegetables. I mean, it's just to be able to sit down to a meal requires someone else. And it's almost like we're afraid to admit, even at the most basic level, that there is an interdependence. In some cases, maybe even a total dependence, because I didn't do anything for that truck driver. That truck driver did something for me. I didn't do anything for the farmer. The farmer did something for me. I mean, you know, if I'm paying $20 for a steak at the grocery store, that $20 gets split up between all those different parties through the system that's been organized, the system that has been set up. But at the end of the day, I'm not alone. It's not just me. It's not just myself. And so we can see that very evidently, very plainly, when we look at physical and natural things. But we have a really hard time with that if we get into any kind of metaphysics. I don't believe in God. Okay. So you're just a byproduct of nature in that. And maybe you believe nature is more than just the physical. You're still just a byproduct of nature. So in that sense, then nature is your God because you didn't create yourself. You're still dependent on nature. Even if you say, I don't believe in God, I don't believe in a creator, you didn't create yourself. You didn't just decide, snap your fingers and show up. So you can say, well, I believe in a creator, a source, a benevolent being that put me here. Or I can say, nature put me here. My mother and father got together, and somehow when this physical body came out, this self that I have was manifested. But either way, it's not just you. It's not just the self. It's not logical. Doesn't hold up to scrutiny. Might sound good. Might alleviate some various different things, but it doesn't hold up. It doesn't hold up. You see what I'm saying? So what's interesting to me is that we can struggle with this idea. Now, let me get to what I actually intended to talk about. For me, my truth, my beliefs, is that there is a God. There is a creator. There is a source that transcends me. That yes, I am divine within myself. I am an aspect of the creator. I have always existed in that sense, and I will always continue to exist in that sense. However, I believe that about you as well, even if you don't believe that about yourself. I believe that about everybody, even if they don't believe it themselves. That's my beliefs. That's what life has led me to conclude, right? We still have to relate. We still have to be interdependent upon each other. I am not you. You are not me. So I can say I am divine, I am God, and I can place it in the broader context of saying, but I'm one small aspect. That's why the ancient philosophers, the ancient Gnostics and Platonists, and going even all the way back to ancient Egypt, talked about a divine spark. You are a spark off of the fire. You are the fire, but you are a spark. And I am a spark, and someone else is a spark. And so you don't have to diminish the self in any way, shape, or form by believing in God, by believing in the Creator, by believing in Spirit or believing in the Holy Spirit. That's not diminishing to the self in any way, shape, or form, any more than me acknowledging you diminishes me, any more than me acknowledging your right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness diminishes who I am. I don't relate to people because I'm pathological. And I'm putting this out here because I'm really struggling and wrestling with some of the stuff I'm seeing on social media. Because to me, it just doesn't make any sense at all. It just doesn't. All right, let me come back to what I wanted to talk about, because here's why is this important? Because last Sunday was Pentecost Sunday for people that aren't from a Christian tradition or a Jewish tradition. Let me leave that alone. Just speak from the Christian tradition. The day of Pentecost commemorates the day that in the book of Acts, the group that was following Jesus received the Holy Spirit, received the baptism of the Holy Spirit. There's some debate over all of that. But I talked a couple of weeks ago about how Jesus said, it's expedient to you, it's to your advantage, it's good for you that I go away. And if I go away, I'll send another comforter, another helper, another advocate, another paraclete, I will send this presence, this guide that will come, this comforter that will come, this helper that will come, this advocate that will come, will guide you and lead you in your life. Now, back to what I was talking about earlier. If you can accept that, if you can entertain that idea, that you are part of a bigger picture, that bigger picture is organized, that it's not just randomness and probabilities. It's not meticulously organized because you have free will. But there is something transcendent that is benevolent, that does have a plan for you and does have a plan for me. And you can relate to that. And by relating to that, your life can actually be better. Just entertain that idea for a minute. Just entertain the idea that if there is something out there and you relate with it, your life can improve. Your life can get better. Doesn't mean you have to. If you can do away with the sin, fall, redemption aspects of Orthodox Christianity, but embrace what Matthew Fox calls creation spirituality. If you can do away with the guilt and the shame, if you can do away with the concept of judgment and punishment, heck, even karma to some degree, and you can still honor your being, you can still honor who you are and honor the reality of a transcendent spirit, a greater consciousness complex, if you want to call it that. Larger consciousness system, Thomas Campbell calls it. All right, so let me tell you my story and how this relates to manifesting. Because here's what I would suggest, that sometimes we try to manifest things in opposition to our lives rather than in cooperation and in the flow of our life. I'm going to say that again. Sometimes we don't manifest what we want because what we want is in opposition to the reason that we're here. It's in opposition to the flow of our life. It's in opposition to what life is presenting to us. If you are a materialist, if you are a physicalist, then life will be a battle. May not be right now, but eventually it will be. Eventually it will be a battle, because you've got all of these forces and there is no coordination or synchronicity between you, the being that you are, the being that feels, the being that thinks, the being that wants, the being that desires. There is no correlation between that you and life in general. Life is just circumstantial. Life is just a mathematic probability. See what I'm saying? And you're just kind of subject to wherever you fit in that. And there's no coherence between what life is presenting you that you cannot control and what you actually can control. And when we open up to the bigger picture, if we say, okay, these things are not disconnected. It's almost like a jigsaw puzzle, right? Like, so if you imagine a jigsaw puzzle and you've got several pieces put together, when it's all put together, it creates one whole, right? But it's in pieces. And so if you take that jigsaw puzzle piece and you put it into place, that's when life really begins to work, because you're not trying to fit where you don't belong. And so on some level, we have to accept This is where I belong. And it can be beautiful, and it can be wonderful, and it can be harmonizing. It could be peaceful. It could be joyful. It could be happy. It could be empowering. But I can't just decide where I fit into the puzzle. And so when I understand that there is a larger thing at play here, when I understand there is a powerful, benevolent force that I cannot see, but I know is with me and I know is in me, that is supporting me. When I accept that I have support from ancestors, I have support from spirit guides, I have support from the unseen and invisible realms, that there is something unseen and magical that's going on and that's happening. If I can open up to that and I can accept that, then I can find synchronicity, harmonization, coherence between me and life, and I don't have to be in control because I can open up and trust life. I don't have to be afraid of it. I don't have to be afraid of a future that I cannot see. I can open up and trust it. And as I'm opening up and trusting life, I can allow in what life is bringing me, what life is presenting me, and then I can work with that. And if I'm connected intuitively to the higher order of reality that is non-physical and unseen, then I can experience synchronicities and manifestations over and over and over again. But it comes from a place of surrender. It comes from a place of yieldedness, not to a scary, angry God in the sky, but just, you can think about it as a surrender and a yieldedness to what is and to what life is presenting to you and me. Now, life has presented me with a lot of challenges, a lot. I've talked about some of them. One of the challenges that my wife and I faced for, 15 years of our marriage was infertility. Now, if you've ever struggled with infertility, to some people that may not sound like much. If you'd never wanted to have kids, that's not going to sound like anything at all. But if you wanted children and everybody else around you is having children, everybody else around you is having children. And if you're in a Christian context, or at least the Christian context that we were in, the groups that we were in, barrenness is seen as a curse, particularly upon the woman. And you can incur people's judgments. Well, why haven't they had kids? When are you going to have kids? When are you going to get it together? And what they don't know, because it's sometimes too private and too personal to share, because we have boundaries, is that we're trying. We're trying. And to be honest with you, when we pursued the medical aspect of it, there was not a good medical reason at the time that was given to us for why we weren't able to conceive. Now, we had options, obviously, but those options were very expensive, and there were no guarantees with those options. And so we began to look around and decided that adopting would be a course of action that would work for us. Our desired outcome was to have children. Our required outcome was that they be genetically ours, that we conceive and go through the whole process, the pregnancy process, the delivery process. That was the required outcome. Well, we can't have kids. And I can't tell you how many times we said and thought we can't have kids, we can't have kids, we can't have kids. We could have had kids at any moment if we let go of our required outcome. And so sometimes we aren't able to manifest because we're putting requirements upon life that life is not willing to give to us. But if we open up to what life is willing to give to us and what life is willing to present to us, we can oftentimes find our desired outcomes if we let go of our required outcomes. So in this case, our required outcome was that we conceive. When we let go of the required outcome, we realized we could have become parents at any point in time. All we had to do was adopt. Now, when you look at adoption, there's multiple possibilities, and many people have done many different ways. And I'm not saying one way is better than another. They all have their benefits and they all have their shortcomings. We decided to do foster to adopt locally. The reasons we decided that, number one, it's not expensive. Number two, there's all these unwanted children that don't have good, healthy, viable homes. We want to provide a good, healthy, viable home. There are children out there already that don't have it. They've been born into an unfortunate set of circumstances, and all we have to do is open up our hearts and open up our homes and bring them in, right? At least it seems that that's the case. Now, here's the downside to it. The downside to almost all adoptions, with few exceptions, is that you don't get the child right away, within right after it's born. If a child is loved, nurtured, provided for, even if they're born with issues, they have a better chance of adapting to life, being whole, being happy, and being successful. If a child is born without any issues, they came into this world perfectly healthy. But those first few months and years, first 2 years, but those first few months, they aren't held, they aren't nurtured. They're in some other country in an orphanage somewhere. And I'm not being critical of any of this. I appreciate anybody that's adopted. I'm telling you how we walk through this thought process. There is the potential for greater problems than there would be had they come into your home when you first got them. That's just the truth. So we decide we want to go the foster adopt route. Now, the downside to that is to get a baby, the baby's mother had to have done drugs when the baby was in the womb. And that's going to cause problems. The other thing is that, and I'm thankful for this, the government, we live in a society where the government can't just come in and randomly take children away from their birth parents. I think that would be terrible. So I think as broken as the system is, it's a good system in the sense that children that are born into dire circumstances because of whatever reasons are given the opportunity to have, for their puzzle piece to be put in a different place in the puzzle, if you understand what I mean by that. So we decided to do this. And so we had been on a waiting list for, I want to say 2 years. And I might be exaggerating. My wife would know exactly and tell me I was exaggerating, but it was a good amount of time. And the way this works, or worked back then, I don't know how it works now, was they would call you and say, we have this baby that we'd like to place with you as foster parents. And you got about 15 minutes to an hour to decide yes or no. Here's the circumstances, and then you get to decide. So we'd received one call and it didn't feel right. So we had said no to that one. And I'm in praise and worship, Father's Day, 2010, June 20th, 2010. And the Spirit speaks to me and says, now is the time for you to become parents. Now is the time for you to become a father. It was Father's Day. And this wasn't just a random thought. This wasn't just a random wish or hope. By that time, I developed sensitivity to know when it was me and when it wasn't. And anybody that was in the Christian paradigm will appreciate this. I actually said back to Spirit, I said, what do you mean by now? Because I know you. You said the last days were 2,000 years ago, right? Even the day of Pentecost that I was talking about, in the last days. This will happen. Last days, and we're still here. So I'm like, you're in other words, what's the time frame? And then I heard this. Now this is June 20th. I heard this by the end of the month. Now I think I would have heard something different, but I don't think I would have been able to receive it. And I'll tell you why. Because the following day, which was a Monday, we go to the movie theater. That was kind of our routine. Go Mondays and go get lunch and go watch a movie. So we're at the movie theater. always get, popcorn and whatever. And the movie hasn't started yet. I get up and I go into the restroom, to use the restroom before the movie starts. And I get a phone call when I'm in the restroom from our caseworker with social services. And she said, we want to know if we can place a baby with you. And the baby's name is Elijah. And that name had a lot of meaning to me, which I won't go into. And so, but they're like, we need to decide in the next 20 minutes or so. So I have this, 15-minute phone call or whatever, but I'm gone for a while. So my wife's wondering what happened. I come in and I say, we got to go. And so we are leaving out the theater. And I said, this is I got this call. This is the situation. And I'll never forget, she grabs me by the shirt and she's like, man of God, she said, is this our son? And right there in the theater, we're lobby or whatever, we're praying. And I said, I think so. Now, we hadn't done enough to prepare, which means we violated everything that we were taught about faith and law of attraction, adding actions to your faith. We didn't have a bassinet. We didn't have diapers. We didn't have whatever, onesies. We didn't have anything. But we said yes. So we're on our way, kid you not, we're on our way to the hospital. And my oldest sister calls. And she says, I don't know what got into my husband, but he decided this weekend to pack up all our baby stuff. And we don't know what to do with it. And we're wondering if we could bring that over to your house today. While we're on the way to the hospital, we hadn't told anybody. Yeah, you can bring that over today. See what I mean? How like when life is presenting you with stuff. So we go to the hospital, we bring him home. They come and they bring the bassinet, the crib, some onesies, all kinds of stuff. Word got out pretty quickly. Ladies from the church were bringing us boxes of diapers and, all the stuff that we needed. I mean, we instantly had everything that we needed. And instantly, my heart was bonded with this little boy, this little baby. And I remember just looking at him and thinking, especially, he didn't like to sleep. You couldn't put him down to sleep. You had to hold him. You had to rock him, or he'd wake up and fuss. Really, really fussy baby because of problems and issues. And so total lack of sleep, just more effort than I ever imagined in those first few months. And I remember looking at him and thinking, you have ruined my life. I'm not getting any sleep. Tired all the time, changing diapers all the time, trying to keep my nerves together with this fussy crying baby all the time, diagnosed with issues right away. And I'm looking at him and I'm saying, you've done nothing but ruined my life in that sense. And genetically, you're not even mine. I have no inherent responsibilities to you. And yet I love you with all of my heart and I would die for you. And it was just the weirdest thing to me, this love and this bond. And now here was the problem. They would go to work, as they should, the government, social services, to keep the child with family members. So they give the parents an opportunity to get clean and get their lives together. And then they give any relative at all opportunity to take that child in. They had to contact every relative. And in this case, dad had like 15 brothers and sisters who all had adult children. So, I mean, we're talking like 50 or 60 people they had to contact just on dad's side. There was a family on mom's side that expressed interest right away in adopting him. like within the first week. They may or may not, this is still a question, belong to a particular Native American people group. And so they had to contact the reservation. Anyone that belonged to that particular tribe that wanted to adopt would have the option of adopting. All of these ahead of us, right? So you got mom and dad getting their stuff together. You got a cousin that was wanting to bring them in. You had another family that was interested in their family. You had the sovereign nation of Native Americans, that entire people group. And I remember at some point we're like 10th or 11th on the list, right? And so the odds of us being able to keep this child and adopt this child were really minuscule. And they were completely out of our control. We had no control over any of it. And I remember we went to one particular meeting, and there were many, many different foster to adopt parents there that were trying to adopt. And I remember one particular family that asked us how many placements we'd had. This was later. This was after it had been settled in the courts that we were going to adopt him. So I'm jumping ahead a little bit. But I remember her saying, oh, you get to adopt him. We've been wanting to do this for like 5 years. How many placements have you had? And we're like, oh, he's our first. And she got really upset, and rightfully so, because they were on their 7th or 8th placement. And so it really didn't look like this was going to happen. In fact, I remember our social worker, just crying literally in my driveway and saying, I'm so sorry. I thought that you would get to keep or get to adopt this child. But when the time comes, we'll connect you with grief counselors and all of this stuff, right? Now, unless you've dealt with infertility, you don't understand that each month that you don't conceive feels like a loss. And so I felt like we had already accumulated a lot of losses and a lot of heartache. And this just seemed like this would be the death blow. Like, I can't go through this again. And so for about 6 months there, things were in limbo, and it looked like we were going to just foster for a while. And then we would give this child away and never know what came of him, never know what happened to him. And that was very upsetting to me. But, and this is so important, I had heard from Spirit the day before, now it's time for you to be a father. My sister called, said, my brother-in-law got this idea to get everything together and wants to give it to us. Can we receive it? And she calls while we're on our way to the hospital. So I had to hold on to that stuff is what I'm saying. If I hadn't had that, I don't know what would have happened. But I felt like we were the rightful parents. This was the right thing. This was the right place. And regardless of what I was seeing with my eyes, regardless of the report that I was hearing from other people, regardless of other families, it's very, very rare that you get to adopt on your first try. Regardless of being 10th or 11th or 12th on the list, regardless of the social worker sitting there crying, saying, I'm so sorry, when you lose this child, we'll connect you with. That's how certain they were that this baby wasn't going to stay with us. I had to maintain a certainty that this was the outcome that I was going to receive, in spite of all of that. Now, that was easier said than done. I would get incredibly anxious. Listen, I come from an anxious stock. I come from a long line of champion warriors. And so it's very easy to worry and very easy to think, How's this going to happen? What's it going to be like when we have to go through this grieving process? What's it going to be like when this doesn't happen for us? Oh, wait a minute. I heard Spirit say over here. So I've got the word from Spirit, and I've got all these other words coming at me at the same time. And so what I would do is I would begin to feel anxious, and I would look inside, and I would say, okay, what's the movie that I'm playing? How am I representing this situation to myself? And I would see that I was playing a movie in my mind of the very last day. We pack everything up, bassinet, put away the clothes, dress him up, take him on the one-way trip for us, and come home and have to start that grieving process. And this would fill me with anxiety. So what did I do? I would sit there with intention, and I would play a different movie in my mind. I would project a different future. I would project a different timeline. And the future that I would project, the timeline that I would project, specifically was being in the courtroom on adoption day. And I would see in my mind, I would hear it, I would try to make it as real as possible. The gavel coming down, and the judge saying, essentially, take him home, he's yours. And I would do that over and over and over again. Every time I would start to feel anxious, every time I would catch myself projecting a worried future, a concerned future, I would have to take control, and I would have to meditate on a different timeline. I would have to meditate on a different outcome. I would have to cling to what I had heard from Spirit in spite of all contradictory evidence, all evidence to the opposite of that was being thrown at me at the time. It's like I had a choice of two futures. One was a dream, and the other was a nightmare. One timeline was a dream, the other timeline was a nightmare. If I was of the persuasion that life has no congruence, no coherence, no flow, no fitting, no synchronicity, no plan, all just probabilities, all just randomness, I'd have given up. Now, here's why this matters. My strategy for dealing with problems, oftentimes, not every time, but oftentimes, especially back then, was to hit it head on. Hit it head on and take control. I don't like waiting. I don't like feeling like I'm not in control or don't have power. Judge me if you want to. I seriously contemplated. There was a point in time, about, I want to say just 2 or 3 weeks in, that we seriously contemplated asking that he be taken out of a foster to adopt home, our home, and be placed into a foster home while he waited for those family members to come in and take him. Because what I was fearing most was bonding 6 months, this thing lasting 6 months, this thing lasting a year, this thing lasting 2 years, because some of them can't. And then after 2 years of taking care of this child, it gets settled in the courts, and this mother and father that he knew, off he goes, and that's it. So I felt like the best option, based on all the information that I had, the best option would have been here. Put him in a different place, and we'll begin our grieving process, because the grieving process will be less the shorter amount of time that he's with us, the sooner we can get on a waiting list again and try again if that's what we choose to do. Seriously considered that option. And it was available to us. But I heard, now's the time for you to be a father. And I had to decide, Can I trust what I heard and make my decision based on that? So going against all evidence, going against all advice, going against the decision that I would have made had I not heard that from Spirit on that Father's Day, I would have created a timeline that would have been completely different than the timeline that we're in. Let's say that again. If I hadn't heard from Spirit, if my brother-in-law hadn't been sensitive and got the stuff together when he did, that was like a sign to me. No, this is real. This is true. Lean into this. See, this is the problem that we get into, especially if we are just naturalists and physicalists and everything is just random and probability. The problem that we get into is that we'll just make decisions based on that. Now, for those of us that believe differently, like me, here's the problem we get into. I heard something. I feel something. I want something. And the only evidence that I have for it is in here. It's in here. It's completely subjective. It's completely intuitive. And everything else is contradicting that right now. Everything else is going against that right now. And I've got to make a choice. I can stay with my intuition and the word that I heard from Spirit that no one can confirm, no one can validate, no one would necessarily even believe. And we made the decision based on what I heard. And I'm so glad we did. And I would keep creating that new timeline by imagining that final day. And so stuff just began to fall into place. It was crazy. The family that was interested in adopting quit showing up to hearings, quit responding to phone calls from social services, just kind of sort of vanished. They had to send a certified letter so that the courts were satisfied that they had done their due diligence in contacting this family that originally had expressed interest. No explanation. They just vanished. They called the reservation, and the reservation said, we don't want to mess with that. I mean, this is what we were told. We don't want to mess with that. It's too much paperwork. It's too much trouble. We'll just sign off. That's what we were told. Like everything just began to fall into place. And tomorrow, so yesterday, but today on Father's Day is my son Elijah's 15th birthday. Yesterday we celebrated it. The 16th commemorates the 14th year that we went into that 14 years since we went into that courtroom and received the right to officially, legally, and in every other way call him our son. So a year later, we've adopted him. They ask us if we want to do this again. We're like, I don't know. We took our time to decide, did we want to try this again? And we just decided, what the heck, we'll just give it a go. And my wife just happened to get all of the paperwork that they needed from us in on the last day at the deadline. And a week later, we get a call and they said, well, Elijah just had a brother. Same parents. You guys are on our list as authorized parents. They're siblings. We'd like to keep the sibling groups together. So the next day we're going to the hospital and getting to know our second son. Different situation, different set of circumstances. This time, the birth parents tried to get it all together, went to rehab, met with them on a number of occasions. And it was really difficult because on the one hand, it's like, oh, I want this baby. I want the brothers to be together. And on the other hand, I want these people, the birth parents, to be successful. I hope they can be successful. So it is quite an interesting journey. And just being yielded, just being surrendered, not trying to control the outcome this time, right? This is just what life's presented us with. And as the parents got to know us, this was the final conversation. We've gotten to know you. They're saying this to us. They're saying, I wasn't there, saying this to my wife. We got to know you. I pride myself, the father said, that I'm a good judge of character. You're wonderful people. You have a good spirit. He'll be better off with you than he will be with us. We want you to have him, and you have our blessing. And within 12 months or something after that, I don't forget the exact time frame, we walked into a courtroom on National Adoption Day. And it was filled with our supporters, at least 50 people there, if not more. I just remember it was standing room only in the courtroom. And the judge commented and said, all the adoptions I've ever done, I've never seen this much support for a family. And because it was a National Adoption Day, our picture ended up on the front page of one of the sections of the local newspaper. So why am I sharing all this with you? Because I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you. I want to help you open up to life. I want to help you open up to what life is presenting you. I want you to feel a sense of empowerment. And I want to let you know that it isn't always easy. Sometimes you have to go completely against the current. Sometimes you have to be like that salmon that's swimming upstream. Sometimes you just have to shut everything else out. What other people are saying, what the status quo is, what normal is, what it looks, the direction it looks like these circumstances are going to go when they're moving away from your desired outcomes. And just encourage you that it can be worth it. Will you end up disappointed sometimes? Sure. But is disappointment the worst thing in the world? No. It always used to crack me up when we'd work with people that had physical, especially life-threatening illnesses and stuff like that. And people would say, well, you're giving them false hope. Giving them false hope. You're just wrong because you're giving them false hope. I'm like, they're going to die. They're going to suffer. Like, I think being disappointed because they had false hope is way down the list of problems here. And what if it does work? Solve all these others, like if it does work, solve all these other problems, but don't give them false hope. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you this Father's Day. I'm just so grateful for all the things in my life, the blessings and the hardships. I'm grateful for every single one of you. Again, if you missed it at the beginning, we have an event coming up July 13th, a 3-hour event where I'll take you through a workshop and I'll teach you how to do some of this stuff. I'll teach you how to identify how you're presenting subconsciously negative outcomes or negative thoughts and beliefs about yourself, and then show you some tools to powerfully address those and in some cases to transform them immediately. Everybody's different, but this will get you definitely results. So if you're interested in that, a $75 suggested donation, we're not going to turn anybody away. And the information's in the description. If you have questions about that, feel free to reach out to me or message me. But thank you for listening to my story. And appreciate you guys. And I will see you next week for Sunday Morning Live. If you're in the New Day Global group, Facebook group, it's a private group. You can join it. It's New Day Global on Facebook. And I try to do about one video a week. I haven't been able to do that the last couple of weeks, but I'm definitely planning on getting something out or a couple of things out this week. All right. God bless you. Namaste. Enjoy your day.